Thank you so much for having me as a spotlight this week. My name is Christina Brandman, and I hope right now that you are all staying healthy and at peace during these turbulent times. I wanted to share a little bit of my story with you, and I hope it blesses you. I wanted to focus on how I have experienced Christ as my Father, healer, and restorer. And I'm going to be referring to my notes on my phone if that's okay. But I grew up in a Christian home, but it was a little different than your average Christian home. We were a part of a Christian fundamentalist cult called the Assembly. As a family, our lives were dedicated to the church, following its specific doctrines and instructions, and spending 5 days a week at the church dedicating our time and money. I also attended a private elementary school associated with the church, where I was taught by some of the head leaders. My parents were always loving, and my dad didn't always follow the rules. We even hid our TV in the closet. I was confused by our secretive life at times, but I trusted my parents. I accepted Christ at the age of 5, and I truly believe that I started to understand him as my Father. That's probably because I had an amazing, loving, earthly father. When I was in 6th grade, my dad found out about all the behind-the-scenes issues that were going on at the church. Every kind of abuse that you can imagine, to money theft and affairs, etc. My father confronted the head leader of the church, but he refused to admit what was actually going on to the body. My father then led a mass exodus and revealed the truth to other families. When we left the church, my parents apologized and wept for all that they believed and what they put us through. I knew they loved us, and they didn't know what they were a part of, and they were humble enough to apologize. I admired them, and I still do to this day. After that, I knew God was still my Father, and he provided a new church family for me. He healed my former understanding of what it was like to be a part of a church and renewed my relationship with him. I had an amazing leader, and I went through a Bible instruction class and remember worshiping Christ one Sunday when I felt the presence of God so heavily. I began to weep, and I remembered thinking, I want to be with him like this forever. Fast forward to high school, and it was about this time where my struggle with deep loneliness and insecurities began. I had amazing friends, I played soccer, and I had a lot going on for me. I was great academically, but a tragic event in our family led me towards deep loneliness. My sister's fiance was killed in a freak accident. After that point, our home became a house of mourning, and my siblings turned to alcohol and drugs. I was always the good child with a clear, direct path, so my parents didn't worry about me. And at that time, they didn't really have the capacity to. My sister was the focus. This is about the time where I dealt with depression and wondered if God was really close to me or noticed me. Around my senior year, the depression worsened and I developed an eating disorder. Looking back, it was me trying to control any aspect of my life and cope. This depression worsened when I was sexually assaulted by my boss, who I trusted as an older brother, at the age of 18. He told me not to say anything, and I didn't. I definitely had a fear of authority. I blamed myself and silently suffered. Just a few weeks after the event, I moved away to attend UCSB. My freshman year at UCSB, I became even more thin and depressed. I felt like God had abandoned me, and I kept asking him where he was, but I felt like he was silent. He really wasn't, but I didn't pay attention to the way that he was speaking to me. A Christian leader from Campus Crusade kept knocking on my dorm door and pestering me, in a good way, until I attended a Bible study. I wanted her to go away, and sometimes I pretended to be sick. And when I heard her knock, I thought, oh, you again. But this was truly God's way of pursuing me and speaking to me through other people. But I couldn't see it at the time. I'm very thankful for what she did for me to this day. During my second year of college, I was about to give up on Christianity entirely. I told my friend, oh, fine, I'll go to the college ministry night for the last time. That night, I encountered God and felt his presence just like the time when I was in junior high. I wept for joy and I felt his nearness. After that point, I was never the same. He even healed me of my eating disorder soon after. I remember worshiping one day and felt him almost take like a dry eraser and kind of wipe my mind clear. And in my heart, I knew what he was doing. I knew he was clearing out those negative thoughts that I had associated with my body image and with my eating disorder. It took time to heal, but I continued to go down that route with him. And during that time, God gave me a promise in Jeremiah 33. It was the whole chapter. He just said, this is for you. But I really clung to this verse in verse 6. Behold, I will bring to it health and healing, and I will heal them, and I will reveal to them an abundance of peace and truth. So I carried that verse with me throughout the rest of my life. And it wasn't all easy after that, but I joined ministry and I served there for many years. And I pursued my master's in education and became a teacher. I didn't know that Christ would continue to show me his miraculous healing power, even more so in my marriage. So fast forward to the past 2 years, my husband and I were married in November 2018, and that was incredibly healing just from my past relationships with men, and it helped me with a lot of my trauma from my boss in the past, learning to trust a man again. So that's been a huge blessing. But only 5 months into our marriage, my husband was struck while stopped on his motorcycle at a red light by a drunk driver. Sorry, it's a little hard for me to talk about. The accident left my husband with a severe traumatic brain injury and a pinched nerve in his lower spine. When I walked into the ER that day, he hardly recognized me. He had to relearn how to walk, speak coherently, and was an entirely different person emotionally. The brain injury hit his emotional control center. And throughout the next 6 months, he battled with severe brain injury symptoms, and some of those involved irritability and impulsivity. For 6 months, I stayed home and cared for him. We rarely left the house because he could not handle being in a car or any light, sound, grocery stores, really anything from daily life. And throughout that time, he also struggled with severe suicide as a result of the injury. But throughout that time, God continued to promise me and whisper to me that he would heal my husband. I wasn't sure how, but I was confident that he would. My husband and I clung to James 1 throughout this time, where it says, James 1 verse 2, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." This was incredibly difficult to believe that God was doing that all the time. I had bouts of anger and confusion, but overall, this is what we knew God was doing in our lives. So I wasn't sure what he was up to in our marriage or his plan. Would he restore us? I didn't know. But we hit rock bottom when I had to call the police and check my husband into a psych ward one night. And after that point, God began to miraculously heal him. We just celebrated a year since his accident on April 6th, and I can honestly say that God fully restored my husband and our marriage. Our lives are even better because of his experiencing Christ's nearness and his powerful healing. Something that I wanted to share with you is that starting from the beginning when we were in the hospital, God was with me every single step of the way. He guided me. He gave me strength and wisdom to make decisions that I had no idea what I should do. I had no clue. And he allowed me to care for my husband. There was absolutely no way I could have done it on my own. But looking back, my husband and I are so thankful that we have been tested in this way, and that now moving forward, we can share our story with others and know that at the end, as it says back in Jeremiah 33, that God is good. His love is everlasting. It says right here, give thanks to the Lord of hosts, for the Lord is good, for his loving kindness is everlasting. And it wasn't just because of his healing that he was good. He was good throughout the entire process. And he's good from all the lessons that we've gained from this and the new perspective on life that we have. So my husband and I feel more confident to live a life that's fully devoted to Christ. We're still dealing with PTSD and other issues that come with that, but that's where we are at. And thank you so much for listening.